Out of all the models of Terminator that have been in the movies, which is your favourite?
T-1000 baby, Robert Patrick, all day. Have you ever been watching the Terminator movies and found yourself thinking, why did Skynet, a supposedly super intelligent mega computer, pick the voice and body of an Austrian bodybuilder for a robot designed for infiltration? That question has been answered in exactly one Terminator movie, in a deleted scene that's exactly as stupid as you're expecting.
So I'm assuming that most people will have actually seen this scene.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Terminator, you've seen the scene we're talking about because it's like infamously terrible. But don't worry if you've not, there'll be plenty of clips of it throughout this video.
And for people who haven't, do you want to quickly run through and I'll put clips in as you talk?
Oh, well, basically, it's established in this, sadly deleted scene that when Cyber Research Systems in Terminator 3 were deciding what face they wanted for the eventual bipedal robots they were going to build, they decided upon the face of a guy called Sergeant William Candy. Before we continue, I would like to point out that at that point in the film, the most advanced Terminator we see is this one, the T-1. And they were already thinking about what they wanted to put on the face of the T-800. Just think about that for a moment, Brad. In the movie, the most advanced Terminator we see is the T-1. And they are already planning on the face for the T-800. That is 799 moves in advance they are planning for this fucking thing, right? There are chess-playing robots who don't plan that many moves in advance, and they're only planning on annihilating one person. What are Cyber Research Systems doing? They invested millions of dollars of R&D into putting a face on a robot they don't know how to make yet.
I also love the fact they're on the T1.
Yes.
They've built one.
They built one Terminator that is on fucking wheels. It looks like a kid's toy that you would get out of a fucking McDonald's Happy Meal.
It looks like a shinier version of Johnny Five.
It basically is. It's this robot is just like a gun on wheels, and that's apparently the pinnacle of military advancement in Terminator 3.
I think they also have a T9, don't they? The little flyer
yeah,
thing.
they have
I think it's a T9.
The hunter-killer, or the finder-hurter, as I like to call it. So they've got a drone with a gun and a gun on wheels. Wow, amazing. The pinnacle of military advancement right there. But just think about how balls-out confident Cyber Research Systems must seem to investors when they're bringing that thing out on stage. When they wheel out that motherfucker, this clunky-ass piece of shit that has to go down a hallway that's 40 foot wide, otherwise it can't pose a threat. And they're going out on stage going, but our eventual plan is to build bipedal walking robots that look exactly like humans. That's not running before you can crawl. That's planning an alibi for a hit and run 3 years before you get your driver's license. Why are you planning that far ahead? And why are you investing millions of dollars in doing it when you could barely build robots that can get down hallways? Sekillalot is more advanced than the T1. I'd be more terrified of that bastard on the battlefield.
Even if you try and justify it by saying they mention Cyberdyne.
Yes.
So there's a chance that they have the data from Cyberdyne analysing the chip.
That is a point because it is mentioned in Terminator 2 that Cyberdyne found the remnants of the Terminator from Terminator 1 and basically worked backwards from that. But remember, all they found was a single arm and a half-busted chip from its head. So I want to know how, from a robot's arm and a microchip, they somehow managed to get the exact look of the skull right.
Even if we give them the most favourable opportunity to have built this possible, if they got the chip from T2, the data from the chip from T2, and it had a plan for the exact T800 in it.
Yeah, I'd here is the basic information about the T800 model number.
Yeah, at what point do they go, you know what, instead of building this thing first and showing it to people, let's build this piece of shit on wheels.
That's the thing, isn't it? If they had the plans for the T800, why start with the T1? Why start with Sekillalot? So as cool as he is.
I feel like I could if I kept adding more lore, I could they built the T1 because that's what all the technology could do and they learned things from. But it's you keep having to add lore to fix a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place.
And the thing is, we wouldn't need to have this conversation if this scene didn't exist, because if you remove that scene from the movie and it was never filmed and we weren't aware of its presence, if we watch Terminator 3 as a standalone product, what we can infer from that is that the human military, the furthest they ever got with the Terminator program, is this Johnny Five looking motherfucker right here. And then Skynet came in and improved upon the design to such an extent they made bipedal walking killbots. And I like that explanation more because that shows why Skynet fucking won. Skynet took this shitty, inefficient human design and improved upon it to the point where it becomes the most effective and terrifying weapon known in that universe. But instead now, we have to assume that from this scene, Skynet just found plans and then just built the shit it found? That makes Skynet seem super incompetent.
I mean, the other side of the coin is they didn't find the plans, and the Cyberdyne research they were mentioning was simply to do with, like, someone recognised the way they would like the direction. And instead, they guessed... Like, they basically guessed what their 800th model would be.
Let's just put this in perspective for the people watching at home. We, as an audience watching Terminator 3, are supposed to suspend our disbelief and believe that at the exact same time in that movie, the military was simultaneously working on both this robot and this robot, and they were showing this robot to investors instead of this one.
Yeah, they weren't just making... that robot on your right side there. They weren't just making it, they were also getting the guy who they were going to put the skin of.
They were doing mocap for it. It's ridiculous. Before we get on to Master Sergeant William Candy though, I just want to, like, you know, put an idea for a scene in the audience's head right now, because I would love if they doubled down on this idea in Terminator 3 and you had another extended deleted scene where you see someone from Cyber Systems Research go to, like, you know, some government brass and explain why they'd invested millions of government dollars into designing a face for a purely theoretical robot that they were all going to build after they built 799 different ones.
So we've covered how stupid it is that they're already attempting to build, whether they had the plans or not, a T-800.
Yeah, a bipedal walking killbot when the closest they've got so far is a Johnny Five looking piece of made in China shit.
But let's just, like, look in a bit more detail at the man behind the face.
Yes, Master Sergeant William fucking Candy. So what we're supposed to infer from that scene as an audience is that Cyber Research Systems took the face of this man, this glorious hunk of a man, and decided to use that as the face of their purely theoretical robot. You may notice, gentle viewer, that this makes absolutely no fucking sense, because why would you invest millions of dollars building an indestructible killbot if you're just going to make it look like a human? It's like, Brad, just think about that for a moment. Like, I get it, maybe it'd be quite scary to see, you know, a group of 200 identical looking soldiers cresting the horizon with guns, but do you know what I think would be more scary? 200 identical looking robot skeletons with guns.
The only reason you would want it to look human is if you were using it for infiltration.
Yes, like it's used by Skynet.
Yeah, but then if they all look the same, what's the fucking... You don't want them off a product line because then you'll know what they look like. Oh, look, there's Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
He's a Terminator.
Yeah, that's the Terminator right there. Like, once the enemy combatants realise that's what Terminators look like, they are completely useless for infiltration purposes, which is why, like, you know, previous movies have established not all Terminators look like Schwarzenegger. That's just what that one particular model looks like. But they're not even planning on using it for infiltration because Sergeant Candy himself says to camera during the fucking, like, the pitch for the T-800 that it's to save, like, you know, American lives. So the idea that it's going to go on the front line. At which point, why even bother giving it a face? If you're going to put it on the front line, it doesn't matter what it looks like. And if anything, I'd argue it'd be scarier if it's a robot skeleton. And we've not even got to the voice yet, because you may have noticed from these clips that Arnold Schwarzenegger has a very thick southern accent in that scene, which was, fun fact, apparently provided by Samuel L. Jackson.
Isn't there a random extra in that scene whose voice Schwarzenegger dubbed over?
Yes, and they turn to the Colonel, who says, I don't like the voice of this robot. We're going to exclusively use to kill people. And this extra turn, because we can fix it in Schwarzenegger's voice. And what we, as the audience, are supposed to infer from that is that after they scanned in William Candy's face and body, they told him and sat down, it looked like the body, fantastic, the face, very, very scary. But that voice, it's just not scary enough. It's like, I can imagine William Candy getting really annoyed about it. He goes, isn't this going to go on a robot? Isn't the robot scary enough? So no, we need a scarier voice. Well, who's got a scarier voice than me? And they point to, like, just some guy in a suit with glasses on and a notepad. And it's like, he's got a scarier voice than I do. It's like, you've not heard him talk. He goes, okay then. I'm a bit disappointed, but I still get paid though, right? Because I'm assuming they must have paid William Candy. Right? You can say, oh, he did it for his country, and he's proud to, like, you know, volunteer for this project. But at the same time, like, I would want some compensation if they were going to put my face onto a robot that was going to be exclusively used to kill people on the front line of wars. Because my face is now going to be plastered on the front of every fucking newspaper and magazine for the rest of human history.
It's not just that. Like, if they're going to put his face on every robot, that means that the nightmares of all the people that robot has fought will be just filled with this man. He can't go to any other country without like people in that country looking over and screaming because it's the man.
Well, not to mention as well,
man.
The Terminator goes back in time in that universe and kills people, which means that there is a guy walking around with the Terminator's face. Like, William Candy exists in that universe now, whether we like it or not. And like during Terminator 2, when you've got like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing twirling shotgun motorcycle combos on like, you know, the cab of a truck driven by like Robert Patrick Policeman, like Sergeant Candy might have been at home and he might have watched that on TV. Like, he might have like, isn't that me? Like, I imagine he got questioned quite a lot after like the events of Terminator 1. And like someone who looked exactly like him walked into a police station and shot 30 people. So because obviously as well, they have the footage of it, don't they? Because if you remember, Brad, one of the key plot points of Terminator 2 is that they actually have surveillance footage of the Terminator fighting like, you know, the T-1000 in the mall, and they compare that footage to the police shootout and realise it's the same guy. And they show it to Sarah Connor, and she shits her pants and obviously escapes from the mental hospital that she's in. Which means that they have footage of this, what they assume to be a mass murderer, which I'm going to guess was on every news station in the country, because you don't just walk into a police station and shoot 30 people and not have people remember that. And if they had, like they show in that movie, surveillance footage of it all kicking off, I'm going to guess that that was plastered on every news network in America for several weeks straight. William Candy must have had a lot of awkward conversations and weird side glances from his neighbours during that time.
Yeah, because let's just cut the crap, right? No one else looks like Schwarzenegger.
No, he has got a very distinctive face, and like in that universe, there is a guy walking around who looks exactly like him, and that must have been like the most bulletproof fucking alibi ever. So did you shoot up like, you know, a police station? It's like, well, actually, no, I was like 40 states away on the other side of the country, like surrounded by friends and family. Like, damn, this guy's good. And I just got so carried away talking about how dumb that is that we haven't even had a chance to delve into how stupid it is that they dub over William Candy. It's like, this isn't like Destiny, where Peter Dinklage's line readings were so shit they brought in Nolan North to do it. It's a fucking killbot. Who gives a fuck what it sounds like? If anything, it sounds more terrifying when it's like some really thick southern accent, because you don't expect to see that coming out of a robot with a gun.
Yeah, imagine if a gigantic machine that looked like Schwarzenegger had like a little girl's voice.
Yeah, that'd be even more scary.
Horrifically terrifying.
If I was the military, do you know what I designed the Terminator to exclusively make the noise of? Little girls singing in the distance in an off key. Do you like singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in like a really weird off-kilter tempo to really unnerve people?
Just 1, 2, and he's coming for you.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying. I'd have it like the Predator. Do you know, the Predator can just play random voice clips? I'd have it doing that shit. I won't give it one person's voice. I'd give it every voice in the world.
You should record the screaming of the people it kills and just play that on loop.
Yeah. And let's not forget that William Candy was mad hyped with the voice and body and face of the Terminator. Imagine how upset he was when he went and watched a demonstration and it's dubbed over by an intern.
I think we should all take a moment and feel for poor William Candy, right? All this question he's getting for murders he's not committed.
Yeah.
He doesn't even get to be he gets his voice told it's stupid.
Do you think that's what happened when the police interviewed him? Like, the police turned up at his door after reports that the guy matching the exact description of the guy who shot up the police station and the mall lived at this address. They knocked on his door, heard him like say the word hello, and went, "It's not him." He opens the door, says, "Hi, how are you?" "It's definitely not him. Let's go, lads." So the guy who committed these murders had a much cooler voice. What annoys me most about this scene, though, is that it completely demolishes a lot of really cool theories people had about why the Terminator looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because one of the theories is, like, the robo-skeleton is so heavy, you need to put, like, a really heavy set, like, you know, build of a human over it to hide all the inner workings of the machine. And it's also, like, hinted at that they do it for intimidation. Like, when you're fighting, like, malnourished future soldiers, it's just, like, when you see this, like, just perfect Adonis-like man walk in holding 2 miniguns, you think, well, fuck me, we've lost. And one of the theories about why the Terminator talks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like in a really stilted, obviously unnatural robotic way, is that Skynet didn't have like access to vast data banks of human speech, because obviously it obliterated virtually all of the like infrastructure the Earth had. So what it had to do is cobble together its best approximation of what a human voice sounded like. And that's why the Terminator sounds like a person who doesn't speak English as their first language, because it doesn't. It's a robot trying to approximate human English. But no, it turns out that Skynet just discovered, like, Terminator voice.exe, and just put that in.
Well, seeing as we're getting onto the topic now, right? We've got to take look at this scene again, but from Skynet's perspective.
Yes.
Because like that would imply that Skynet went through like some files they found at the like cyber research facility and just were like, oh, that guy's face looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this voice. Let's add this to our robot that they've already designed. Why would they pick up their? I'm lost.
That's the thing. It makes Skynet look super incompetent because it basically means that it just took all of the human ideas, like the supposedly inferior race it wants to, like, you know, wipe off the face of the planet, and uses them because it can't think of anything better, but then somehow comes up with a T-1000.
I mean, to be honest, they are shit anyway because they did a T-1000 and then tried to improve it with the worst TX.
We've talked about this before, haven't we? We've definitely talked before about why the T-1000 is better than all the other Terminators, and why it's stupid for Skynet to have sent back, you know, the Terminatrix after sending back a T-1000, because it's an obvious downgrade. But while rewatching Terminator Genesis, because I hate myself, I noticed something that makes the T-1000 seem even more OP. Because in that movie, Brad, how do they take out the T-800 that first comes back in time?
It's sniper rifle for the chest, isn't it?
Yeah, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger walks up and shoots it with a shotgun. And they kill it with a gun. A big gun, to be sure, but still a gun. How do they kill the T-1000 in that movie?
They have to lure it into a very special facilities set up with pre-planned acid to pour out the ceiling.
And then the T-800 has to hold it under the acid, because even just dropping the acid on it doesn't guarantee you're going to kill it. You have to hold it in place. So for the T-800, they got a gun and just shot it. For the T-1000, they had to buy like 4,000 gallons of acid, rent out a warehouse, lure it to the warehouse, hold it in place as you poured the acid on it, and that still almost didn't kill it because it almost gets out. It's like, why would you even bother sending back fucking like T-800s if that's how hard it is to kill the T-1000?
I never understood why they didn't just send back another T-1000 for Terminator 3.
Because it's too powerful. Like, look at what they had to do to kill it in Terminator 2. Like, if they sent back another one, that's game fucking over right there. It's like, it's the Quicksilver problem, isn't it? Like, you've introduced a character or a concept that's so absurdly broken that it's kind of silly to have any sort of threat while it exists. Because we mentioned before how the ending of Terminator 3 wouldn't have happened if Skynet sent back another T-1000, because the T-800 wins by physically restraining, like, you know, the Terminatrix and forcing a bomb into its mouth and then holding onto it for a few seconds while the bomb explodes. That wouldn't have happened with the T-1000 because it would just turn into a pool of liquid metal and just slid under the door and just killed like John Connor right there and then.
There's only one advantage I can see to having a TX, and it's got weapons built into its body.
Oh, you mean like that flamethrower, which is super useful with a range of all about 14 fucking foot, whereas the T-800 gets a minigun and a coffin full of guns. It's like, the minigun does more fucking damage than that. Like, guns are not hard to find in the Terminator universe. Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first fucking movie walks into a gun shop and just walks out with a fucking arsenal. If a Terminator wants a gun, it's going to get one. There is no advantage to giving the Terminator a gun. If it's like got the ability to perfectly blend in with its surroundings anyway, it can find one. So that's what like the Robert Patrick one does, isn't it? It just becomes a police officer and can therefore go anywhere it fucking wants. And I'm presuming it just gets into a squad car and just takes all the guns in there. So it's so baffling.
So to bring this back on topic,
yes,
let's sum up what we know so far.
Okay.
So at some point in the past, Cyber Research Systems got hold of the destroyed data, or didn't, of Cyberdyne's research.
Yes, on the single Terminator arm and microchip they found, which Terminator 2 establishes that Cyberdyne used to become, like, you know, a tech giant by reverse engineering the technology they found, because it was years ahead of what we had at the time. But they don't use it for military applications, I don't believe. They just use it to basically just get ahead.
So the military took this information and somehow managed to reverse engineer a machine that they had no data on.
No, and no one knows how it works.
And then chose a random sergeant to be the face of it, but not the voice, because there was a guy sat in the office who was apparently better for the job.
Yeah, who randomly had a more intimidating voice than the 6'4" man mountain like on screen.
And seeing as like the T-1 and the whatever the flyy one was, what did you call it?
The Finder Hurter.
Yeah, the Finder Hurter, right? If they were the furthest advance that we saw in the movie, that means that this scene happened not long before the eventual like robot apocalypse.
Yes.
So obviously their designs didn't go beyond this, which means that Skynet took this early data from a company that they've advanced way like far beyond from to make their own Terminators that all look the same, even though they're for infiltration, and used the voice lines of some dude that they had
some random intern who just like sat in like, you know, a voice booth alongside Siri and recorded all his lines.
I can understand why this scene did not make it into the film.
Because when you break it down, it completely obliterates the established lore of the Terminator universe, which Terminator Genesis went ahead and did anyway. But yes, as you might expect, this scene is not in the theatrical version of Terminator 3 and is therefore not considered canon. However, I would like to counter that by saying any scene which involves Arnold Schwarzenegger wearing this hat should absolutely be canon. Do you know what I love most about this scene?
What?
It's 2 minutes long, and it was obviously intended as like, you know, an Easter egg for fans. Like, oh look, this is where the Terminator's face came from. Haven't you always wondered what that is? And also as a joke. But it completely just destroys the universe that it exists in, to the point where this single 2 minute scene we've been recording for 50 minutes. But there's going to be so much cut footage of me and you just going back and forth about how this ruins Terminator.
Yeah, because we came into this, like, the article itself, if anyone goes back to read it, has got a couple of jokes about how they made a T-800 model when they only have a T-1, right?
Yes.
But then, obviously, when Karl was reading that, my brain went, well, no, but they mentioned Cyberdyne, so they might have had their research. But then you find yourself going, if they have their research, how do they get details on how the head's built?
Yes.
Or is it like the paradox loop, where they built it so it exists in the future and it goes back in time to build itself?
But then you find yourself asking, if they had Cyberdyne's research, why start with the T1, which is objectively more inefficient and less cool looking than the bipedal walking robot? So if you already had plans to build that, why build the T1?
Yeah, and if they had the research, how come that isn't important, like, of paramount importance to find out where it came from? Like, they don't know it's a time-traveling robot. They just know that some tech they don't understand exists in their world.
Yeah, but if Cyberdyne gets destroyed, so they blow up all the stuff and then the
So
government...
they assume that Cyberdyne built the tech, got destroyed, and then they... But then who destroyed Cyberdyne? Surely they would want to know why...
Yeah, it turns out that the person who destroyed Cyberdyne just so happens to look exactly like the guy they bring in as the face of the Terminator.
That's a good point as well, because like
Yeah.
you'd have the footage of like from the police cars and stuff of Cyberdyne being destroyed.
Yeah, because that's
and the
what they
man
do.
doing it with he's got the minigun in that scene.
Minigun and the grenade launcher.
Fucking hell.
Well, the thing is, there's a security guard in that film outside Cyberdyne who sees Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger shoots him in both his kneecaps and says he'll live. That security guard is going to remember what the guy who shot both his kneecaps off looked like.
See, if I was working for Cyber Research Systems and I was like given all this information, there's two directions you can go down. One of them is apparently Candy is a mass murderer and should not be put in this project anyway. The other one is if you believe the stories that will come out of like the psych ward of a woman who said that a robot came back in time and you had the data of a machine that can't exist yet, and that you'd be like, I'm building this robot right now.
How does no one realise? I refuse to believe that nobody in that office asked the question of, where did this research come from? Oh, it comes from Cyberdyne. Okay, but why does Cyberdyne have, like, you know, technology in the 80s that is 3 decades beyond what we have now? Would you remember the story a few years ago about the guy who crashed into the police station and shot 30 police officers? Yeah, I do. Didn't he come back and shoot them all? Yeah, he did. That guy never got caught, did he? No. Like, Sarah Connor said he was the robot. Oh, right. Wait a minute. What did that guy look like again? Oh, we'll put it on YouTube. Duh. Oh, wow. Who are we getting in for the face of this thing? Oh, a guy called William Candy. Wait.
Just bring up the footage of the guy who destroyed Cyberdyne.
Okay.
Just double check.
Yeah, it wasn't an E-fit from the security guard who got both his legs blown off by, like, you know, the guy who broke in and destroyed Cyberdyne, who said he was from the future. Yeah, okay.
Around the same time, there were a bunch of guys who got their kneecaps shot out, weren't there? Just basically all this footage.
Yeah. Or as well, like, I know it's, I think Miles, I forget the name of the guy.
Miles Dyson.
Miles Dyson gets killed,
Yeah.
but his family do see the Terminator. His family, as far as I'm aware, are alive. Miles Dyson kills him, but surely his daughter and his wife, they saw the Terminator. They must have told somebody. Like, the government must have interviewed them. Like, about, do you know why your husband, like, you know, blew up his place of work? No. Well, do you know anything about, like, you know, his supposed, like, you know, accomplice, a giant Austrian man with a minigun? Did you see anyone look like that? No. I didn't see that. Do you also know why your husband was working on future technology involving theoretical robots? I don't know nothing about no robots.
The only way that Research Systems could possibly have the design of that Terminator's body there is if they already did have a copy of the plans. Because otherwise, you wouldn't have gone that far ahead. You wouldn't have just suddenly gone from shitty wheels to man robot.
Yeah, you don't go from gun on tank treads to robot skeleton with a laser. That just doesn't happen. And someone out there might be thinking, well, sure, that's just the natural evolution of the robot. Like, a walking skeleton. It's like, well, no, because if you've got efficiency in mind, the most efficient thing would arguably be the Find-A-Hurter, which is just a drone with a gun. Like, if the sole purpose of this thing is to shoot people, it doesn't need to have legs. It just needs to have many, many guns. Like, realistically, like the Terminator, if the military is designing it purely for killing people, should look like a droideka from Star Wars. It should just be a ball that rolls around the battlefield and has guns pointing out of every direction.
Well, if we use Terminator Salvation now as a basis for this, I think there's machines in that which are called T something else and are in between, obviously the one in the 800, and that's the first movie that's like that. We've just made this T-800, and first of all, John Connor sees it. Like, so if they ever send that model in, he's going to know what it looks like. But just, like, you can see, I think you can see that it's on a product line. You can see a line of them and one of them steps out. It's like, first of all, you've already just revealed what your infiltration robot looks like to the head of the fucking, like, resistance.
So he knows exactly. And the thing is as well, you only have one mould because we know they all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.